everybody, what's up? Charlie with Coffee and Cameras. Today I got Dan Ginn in the house. I originally came across Dan's work back in New York City. We were mutual friends and the photographer through Chris, right?
Yep, absolutely we are, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We come around the block a time or two and then some on there, man. But how's it going?
It's good. It actually reminded me of when I first came across you. I think you had quite a large Instagram account and you decided I'm gonna just delete it. And I
Yeah.
remember at the time I was like, I think this guy's gone mental. He must be, he must have lost his mind. Like, what?
Yeah.
I think you had what, over 100,000 followers, and you're like, I'm kissing that goodbye. And then,
Oh, it got up to like ridiculous numbers, like 289K before I capped it. And it was just like COVID, all that good stuff, whatever. And I'm just like, I'm done.
yeah.
Yeah, it's done. Drop the mic, done. Walk. Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing, to be honest with you. I mean, I use the socials and stuff, but I've given up being kind of a slave to them, so to speak. You know what I mean? Just I've got my little community in life, and I'm pretty happy with that. And whatever happens on socials happens, but I'm not gonna break my bones and lose my sleep over it, because it can get like that sometimes, you know?
You got it. I've had so many students that are like chasing the gram, so to speak. Like I had this dude come into my class one time and he's just like, yeah, how do I make cooler stuff for the gram? I'm like, there's the door. There's
Yeah.
the door. Please just no. But it's like, chasing an algorithm, man. It just no
Yeah.
way. It's like a
It's
journal for me these days, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, chasing the algorithms is just soul destroying, to be honest with you. It's like, that's why people from our generation, maybe not the younger ones, but I mean, like, we didn't get into photography to have, AI and robots tell us what's good and what's not, you know?
Right?
We were we were either learning out on the field, as we went along, and making it up and making our mistakes, or we were stuck in books looking at the photographers from yesteryear. But having a social media platform tell us what's good and what's not is an algorithm that's made by people who probably aren't photographers themselves. They're just whatever. But yeah, I didn't expect to go on a little social media rant, but there we go.
I mean, you bring up a great point, man, because that's the whole reason I'm doing this whole series on here is like give credit where credit's due, basically, like actually inspire people, bring people up, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Because, like, for me, like 289K, I'm like, why the hell am I on here? Because I never got a bit of work from that.
Mm.
I was already shooting for like Kanye Nast, I was shooting for Vogue, I was shooting like Live Nation stuff, I was on tour with bands, like all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, not one bit of work has ever come from being on social media.
Mhm.
And so, like, I think I seen you post about this before too. You're talking about it, how like mental health is important and like how
Mm.
just being authentic is important and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, what
Yeah.
do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, how many people do we see saying that they need to take a social media break? Because it's impacting their mind. Like, I've never, there's reasons to take breaks from making photographs, but I've never had to take a break from making photographs because it's been detrimental to my state of mind.
Hmm.
It's so that's one red flag in itself, that we've got these little things that we actually already know. We shouldn't get too lost in these, because it's bad for us. I'm not completely against social media, especially with like traveling and stuff like that. It's a great way to connect. Like you and I, we've had back and forth on socials, email and stuff, and now we're doing this. So it's social media is always a great kind of foundation in the modern world to make real things happen. But I just think a lot of people, industries, subcultures, they get so in on the platform that they lose touch of kind of what they're trying to achieve in life, whatever that may be, whether it's to make a good photograph or, tell the world what you think of nature and things like that. They get too lost in the social media mind f. Can I swear on this? I don't know.
Yeah, go for it. Go
the,
for
the mind fuck of social media, that they forget what their authentic selves are. So for me, I just take it with a pinch of salt. It's there if I need it, and if I don't, I'm doing something else.
I mean, the funny thing is, we're talking about like killing Instagram and stuff. Like, I'm back on Instagram nowadays. I got whatever number it is and stuff. I don't care anymore, to be honest. I'm just posting up like the journal stuff. I'm posting up about classes and mentorships and whatever. But like, I just got a TikTok account for the first time. I've sworn against this for so many years because like I just hate the inauthenticity.
Yeah.
Like, going at it on there, like, people do stupid things for likes and follows and money and whatever it is in there. I'm just like, I just can't be like that, you know? Just not programmed that way.
Am I going to
So,
see a video of you in like 2 weeks doing a TikTok dance? And but hey, power to these people. If that's how they want to manage their time in the world, then good for them. But I just think it's such a waste of the small amount of time we have until we, go on to the next section, whatever that is after we die. Who knows? But I think, yeah, I think it's I think there's better ways that we can all spend our time. But from a promotional perspective, I understand why photographers, podcasters use it, because, it gets, if you do it well, it certainly helps you get your message out there. And that's something that we can't deny. So I would never tell someone not to use social media. It's certainly not a waste of time in all areas, but yeah, maybe we shouldn't let it consume us as
mhm.
maybe we did when it first came out, because it was shiny and new, and we're like, wow, I can put a tweet out or a post, and someone in Azerbaijan can see it, and I'm posting it from here, and it's like, wow, isn't this wild?
Mhm.
And that's a great and fun thing, but yeah, we let it consume us in the long run.
It's interesting because back in the day, like early Facebook days, everybody come over from like MySpace and like wherever they were at before that. And everybody post like the breakfast, their fitness photos, like whatever. Everybody's over that nowadays, thank God. But
Yeah.
but I mean, it's become something different where people just doing anything for money, basically.
Yeah.
And what do you think about like authenticity versus like photography? What's your take on that?
In what context do you mean?
Like, let's pick on. I won't pick on too many people to be honest, but maybe I will. I don't know. There's this kid. His name is Jordy Qualtic. You ever seen him before?
I may have done, but it doesn't spring to mind.
Okay, so Jordy, he posts these really cool shots where he does something like he puts fire around a hoop with like tissue
Okay,
paper, and then he photographs through it. And he
nice.
photographs a pretty girl. Just go ahead and photograph like a model through
Okay,
a ring of fire.
I
And then
see
he
where we're
posts
going.
this up, and he's like, "Okay, this is my art. This is my photography. I'm going to teach you how to do this on TikTok. And you can
Mhm.
regurgitate exactly what I'm doing on there." How do you feel about stuff like that these days?
I mean, look, I wish I don't know this photographer in particular, but I know where you're going with this, because we see what photographers do with the female body, shall we say, including female photographers, might we add. I think there is like, I would prefer people just be more authentic in the sense of saying, look, the reason 90% of the time this woman is here is because I know if she's not, you won't click on my content. If I just do a ring of tissue with Dan Ginn on the other side, like
Hey, we could
understandably,
start a series there, man. We
maybe
could
so.
start a series. Break the algorithm.
Understandably, you're probably not going to click on it. And look, I mean, it is what it is. If people are going to consume it, then if people want to be known, then go ahead and create it. But what I do struggle with is how, there's this. We'll just masquerade it as we're celebrating the female form. We're empowering women by, having them bend over with the backsides in the air, like doing very kind of suggestive poses, and I'm not here to shame that. That's cool, but it's clear what's going on. The reason you're making that content, not everyone, but it's just common sense that the reason people will make that content is not because it's true to who they want to be as an artist, but because it's going to get them the most attention. And we're in the attention market nowadays. We're all
Mhm,
trying to fight for attention. Please look at me, look at me.
mhm.
And what is one of the oldest tricks in the book, if you get a beautiful woman and have her pose in suggestive ways, then that's likely going to grab someone's attention more than an image of a family struggling to feed themselves in rural, wherever that happens. So yeah, I think there's a sadness to it, but I get it at the same time, and that's that.
I kind of call it low hanging fruit is what I go for because like you get like the whole model thing, you get like the whole sunset thing, you get like the iconic like copy of the Honor Cartier Bresson like street photography kind of stuff back in the day. Like everybody's walking in history's footsteps, and like for me, I'm 34 years in on this, man. Like crazy ride, but it's good. And you see all that stuff come up again and again and again, and I mean, it's cool to go ahead and actually walk in the footsteps of those that have come before us.
Mhm.
But then when do you actually like make the jump from that to like what your voice is my argument. So what do you think about stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fine line between inspiration and imitation, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's funny, I'm reading a book at the moment. Do you know Rick Rubin, the producer,
Oh
music
yeah,
producer?
yeah. Good guy. Yep.
Wonderful book. It's called The Creative Way of Being. And he essentially says that whilst research and studying is a good thing,
Hmm.
it's also detrimental to a person's journey as an artist because, whenever you start learning photography, just one of the first things you're told is, look, there's Henri Cartier-Bresson, and he's number one, and you can't argue that. There's no other ideas. Like, this guy's the master, and along with other ones, but he's like the common one that always comes up. So just from the moment we pick up a camera for the first time and start educating ourselves, we're already being told this one way of doing things is the poster of all things kind of candid photography and shooting. So people naturally go, well, anything outside of what this group of photographers are doing
Hmm.
can't be any good. And that's a wrong way to think, because the success, there's two types of success. There's one where you kind of follow the blueprint and you fit in, as certain photographers kind of move past the limelight, you just click in automatically, making the same kind of work. And then there's the other type of success where it's like, Jesus, we've never seen anything like this before. We're just going to ignore everything we've ever known. And obviously that one's much harder to achieve.
Right.
It's very hard to achieve, and most of us probably never will. But I think it's something we should all aspire to. And, whilst we might not get there, I'd rather fail, with our own identity than succeed being like someone else.
Right. Yeah. Like for example, these days, like oh man, like when I went on my exile, so to speak, from New York, but I got back in Michigan for a couple of years, and I was on my old grandparents' old farm,
Yeah.
and it's not New York City by a long shot. Like, yeah, you're out there, you hear crickets, you see stars, whatever and stuff. But I found myself not shooting. And then
Right.
after a while, like after I got through the shock of like COVID and whatever was happening, I started going out in the woods and just making pictures for myself of like daily stuff. Like I'd chop down a tree because I wanted to get wood to make lamps and tables and all that kind of other stuff that I was exploring in
Yeah.
a creative aspect. And when I did that, I found out that the work I was making meant more because it was more authentic of like what I was actually doing
Yeah.
than like just shooting all the low hanging fruit, as I call it, like we're talking about. What
Mhm.
do you think about like involving other stuff that you like outside of photography to actually kind of shape your journey? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a big music lover, and I say it like nobody else. Everyone loves music. Music was very much at the center of my childhood and my adolescent years, and young adulthood as well. And I often I'll be listening to a track and I'll be, kind of eyes closed kind of thing. And then the track will kind of help me visualize images. What kind of image would kind of fit well with this kind of music? And it's something I want to experiment with eventually, because I think there's an untapped kind of area. I mean, people have done it, but I think we could go a bit deeper where we can mix imagery and music. It seems that with photography, it's like it's either just photography, and if it's anything else, then it has to be video and music. But
Hmm.
I don't think that's, again, it's another kind of rigid rule that we've created. I think if you made like there's an artist called John Hopkins, and he does very kind of chill, almost meditative kind of music.
Mhm.
And, he might write one track and that goes on for 15 to 18 minutes. And I just think if you mix that with, imagery that kind of synced perfectly with the music, and you got people to just sit there and just listen to the noises and connect to the images, I think you'd have especially with VR and wherever that's going to go at, I imagine, someone slamming those on their head and they've got music in their AirPods and they've got this kind of like visual journey as well in the VR. I think there's a lot of potential in that area to combine those two kind of creative fields and, make them one.
It's interesting because, like, have you ever been to Disney World before?
Hmm.
Yep. You know the ride Soarin' in Epcot?
Which one is it?
It's the one that they put you on like a swing and then they take you up to a big video screen. And in
Oh,
the video screen, it's kind of rounded and curved and shows you like an immersive experience where the video surrounds you. And then all of a
yep,
sudden you feel wind and you smell
yep,
oranges and like everything else.
yep.
It
I
kind of
was there when
reminds
I
me of
was
what you're
10.
saying. Yeah,
I
yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
but
man.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
It's kind of
Kind of
like that, maybe. Yeah,
4D experience, would they call it? I don't know. 4D,
yeah.
I don't know.
4D, 5D, whatever it is nowadays. I'm like, yeah.
But I do think there is a lot of potential in kind of, I wrestle with this because I believe, I believe in the value of going to a gallery and seeing images on a nice, well-made print. But I think there is lots of potential, and we're heading this way, whether we like it or not, in the VR space to kind of give photography and the way it's consumed a new lease of life,
Hmm. Yep.
because I think the digital way of consumption killed it, to be honest with you. I think, even though that's kind of the common way we look at images now, it, it's, it's kind of dead in the way that we just scroll through them and then, oh yeah, tap tap. But when I go in a gallery,
Hmm.
um, it's a completely different experience. It's like I'm actually part of the imagery. I'm invested in the story that whatever said photographer's telling, and I think we can blend the two worlds of digital and imagery consumption to make it more immersive and less soul destroying, scrolling and stuff like that.
That's a pretty cool idea, actually. Like, back in the day, I ran across this project. This guy was doing point mapping technology. Do you know what that is?
Nope.
Okay, so he took like an Xbox Connect in the early days,
Okay,
and this thing shoots out lasers and tells you like where XYZ coordinates are in space in there. So it can tell you like dimensions of a room or something like that.
that's cool.
That'd be really cool to map gallery spaces and then put your
Yeah,
work up in a digital thing and then throw on like the digital headset. Take
yeah,
somebody
yeah.
into an immersive experience instead of just Instagram, for example.
Yeah, when I was writing for the photographer, I looked into kind of the Web3 and how photographers are doing things with NFTs and stuff like that. And there are kind of digital galleries already there, built for VR, but they're very much in their infancy. So
Yep.
it, it the motion is already going, but it's still yet to kind of pick up pace and go to really where it can go. But I can't wait. And if I was a bit more tech savvy, I'd do the things that I'm telling you that I'm saying here. But
I mean, nowadays people are making AI versions of themselves and selling it online. So, like, hey,
yeah,
why not photography?
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, AI photography. That's a different topic, isn't it? That's a topic in itself.
Yeah.
I'm not really comfortable with the term AI photography. I
Hmm.
guess I'm a bit of a gatekeeper in that sense. Well, basically, the word photography, you break it down, photonography, and what that
Hmm.
translated to was essentially drawing with light.
Hmm.
Um, so you're not doing that on a machine. So I'm uncomfortable with the term AI photography because it's not that, but it's digital art, and I have no problem with that. I think that's cool. Let's explore what we can do.
Sure.
I guess I'm a bit of a gatekeeper in the sense that I'm not going to call it AI photography.
If we go way back in history of photography, they had the camera obscura where the painters would basically use that to replicate scenes and all that kind of stuff too. It
Yeah.
was the early stages of what led to photography, of course.
Yeah.
But then nowadays we got the AI, which kind of like resamples bits and pieces. It regurgitates what's already there in these libraries or archives or whatever and stuff that maybe like OpenAI and people have stolen, so to speak. Um, but
Yeah.
we won't get into the legal side of
Yeah,
more,
we don't want the video taken down.
right? But stuff like that makes me think on there because like back in the day they were resampling light. And then
Mhm,
they figured out how to capture light with emulsion and stuff like that, with the old silver gelatin processes, and even before that, like the salt prints and whatever it was back in the day.
mhm,
Like maybe AI is a different thing that's going into the future, and it'll be different for our immersive virtual experience in like five,
mhm.
10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Where do you think it's all going?
Oh, man. Well, I think in the first instance, it's going in a way that's gonna benefit large scale organizations. Like if we're just talking on a from a photography standpoint, then, I think it was either Cosmopolitan or Vogue, one of those magazines, those
Mhm.
types of magazines, did the first ever AI cover. And I don't know how much the individual got paid to create that cover. So it's very hypothetical here, but the only real incentive for a publication to go down the route of AI is because it's going to be cheaper in the long run, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that's sad. I think that's a shame. In terms of kind of everyday photography, I'd like to think people will still enjoy making photographs regardless of what they can do with AI. Like to me, AI will never replace the feeling of getting outside and not knowing what's ahead of me and creating a photograph in the real world. That experience can never be replaced. So, and I hope people realize that, because photography, other than the popularity or the gigs and the money, take all that away, photography still has plenty to give you in everyday life, in your existence. So I think it's bad for certain types of photographers, but there'll be certain types of industries, wedding, you won't have AI doing wedding photography, at least not anytime soon. Same with events and things like that. But for product and kind of just bog standard advertisement, then, it might be a bit of a problem for those photographers.
You bring up a good point. Did you see that there's a open? It's not an open AI thing, but it's like another company or whatever. They started a portrait studio online. They're using
Right.
face swap to go ahead and swap people into different situations to do their senior portraits or like whatever. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
No, it's silly. Just, and also it's sad because, I there's something beautiful about a photographer, having a relationship with whether it's someone who's just graduated high school or someone that's just got promoted at work, and having that connection and relationship of documenting it and getting them in their best light. Just having someone swap faces and I don't know. Look, if the technology's there, we should experiment with it. And I certainly don't ever want to be someone who says you shouldn't be allowed to do something, because it's I believe in a for the most part we should be as free and liberal as possible, especially in the art world. There shouldn't be any constraints and do's and don'ts, as long as it's honest.
Mhm.
Which we're seeing is also a problem, because there's people submitting AI generated images into photography contests and they're slipping through the net.
Yeah.
And I think the one kind of famous one was the one that he entered an image to the Sony Awards,
Hmm.
but he did it with the intention of admitting it afterwards. So no problem. He's like saying, "Hey, look how easily it is to slip through the net. I've just won this photography award, and I made it in on my laptop in X amount. I don't know how long it takes to make one, but you know,
About 10
without as much
seconds.
legwork." There you go.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there are people out there and artists out there who aren't being authentic and who aren't saying how this was done. And I think all of us should keep true to that and just set, if we've used a technique that goes beyond what's normal, like a composite, for example, there's a lot of, when I say uneducated, I don't mean this in a negative way, just the everyday person who doesn't study photography like
Mhm.
photographers do, they'll see this mountain with the moon looking so large, and there's this perfect like animal just on the tip of the rock, and it's like, how did all this come together? What a wonderful world we live in. And it's like, well, not quite, but it's still creative and it's still impressive. But it's important that we let consumers of photography and consumers of digital art know not the full process, but at least, an idea of what's gone on. So everyone knows what is possible in the realms of standard, just making a frame, and what's possible in terms of when we get onto our computers.
Yep. I think of two things too, because I come up analog and then I went into digital basically. Like I shot film way before I shot digital back in the day. And
Cool.
when we come up to digital point, like I was a holdout for a while because like if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I have my
Hmm.
camera, I have my workflow, I'm good, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of people that have been doing this a way longer time than me that said I'm never going to digital. Never, 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 never. And I said, okay. I eventually found out, okay, digital is a lot more efficient. You can go ahead and dump the images faster, turnaround, which for a business standpoint makes sense.
Yeah.
For the film standpoint, it always slowed me down, especially in the streets of New York. Like I'd go out shooting with the M6 or like an old FM2 or something like that, and
Yeah.
it'd slow me down because you got 36 bullets in the chamber to use. What are you
Yeah.
gonna do if you use up your roll of film and you don't have more in your pocket and there's not a store for miles? What are you gonna do? You know?
I'd be so poor if I transferred my digital workflow to analog workflow because
Exactly.
I don't spray and pray, but I don't I'm quite liberal in how many, like, I'll sometimes I'll make 50 photos a day, and if every day for a week, and if I was doing that in today's market with analog, I'd be poor.
There was a fellow teacher at one of the schools that I taught for in New York. She had an old like fridge of film or something, like a mini fridge full of film because she'd shot film back in the day too. All of it was expired, and she's like, "Make me an offer." I'm like, "I got $40 in my pocket. Cool?" And she goes, "Cool, deal." And so she brings me this mystery bag, and she had like old school like oh goodness, like we had some old school Kodak in there, like good old Trax 400, like all sorts of cool stuff, medium format, everything. This
Yeah.
is probably hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of film in there, and she just $40. Get rid of it. Get out of my place. So I went back and I picked up the M6. I picked up the FM2. I sold Chris a Mamiya I had way back in the day too. That's how we met actually for photographer. Is like I sold him
Okay.
a Mamiya, and
Nice.
he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm shooting over here for these guys, whatever." He's like, "Do you want to come do this thing for photographer?" And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And so that's how Chris and I connected back in the day. But
Nice. Nice.
I shot all that medium format film, and I was like, "I'm done with the Mamiya because I'm not gonna buy this stuff. It is expensive."
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna transfer all my digital archives too, because I mean, oh goodness, digital come out in like early 2000s, really heavy on there.
Yeah.
And I mean, from what is it, 23 years now or something like that for the 2000s?
Yep.
23 years of work, man. Like that's something I could not do on film because like film would just, I don't know, I'd sit here like burn all my time scanning. Like, and if you
Yeah.
scan, is it the same thing as actually printing? And then you print, and what are you gonna do with it?
Yeah.
All those sorts of questions come up.
But
But
it's funny because I started in 2006 or maybe
yeah,
2005, and I started at college here in the UK.
mhm,
So digital was obviously very, very much out, but it was still new enough where the teachers were like, this was the kind of standard way of doing it before digital cameras came out, and we went into the dark room and we did shitty prints for the first time, and we're like, this is cool. And then they were like, and now we're going to go onto our computers and we're going to do Photoshop, and all of us were just like, oh, this is much easier. Let's do this. Let's.
Right.
So the tutors were kind of experienced enough to kind of still want to show us the options, but we very quickly went, yeah, get me an SD card and one of those digital cameras because it's going to be so much easier. So I've never really shot film, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Always been digital. So
I tried a whole bunch of different cameras back in the day just to see what it felt like to hold those in my hands. Because, like, I'm sure you know this already, like, ergonomics is a really important thing for anybody that's
oh yeah,
coming up out there and stuff.
yeah,
Like, how it feels in your hands when you actually shoot is one of the most important things because everybody's shooting on the phone nowadays.
yeah.
And sure, like, in the back of the phone, like, you get these little pop socket things or whatever where you can't drop it, whatever. But, I mean, it's a different experience, and it's not that it's wrong, it's just
Mhm.
different, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, how do you feel about the people that come up with the phone that they've never actually touched a real camera, so to speak?
It's difficult because I know the difference. I know what this has felt like. This isn't. I just got this recently, but before this, I had the XT2. This is
Cool.
Fujifilm. If you can't make it out, and this just, I don't know. I just get endorphins in my brain when I'm playing around with this, and when I'm making a photograph on my iPhone, it's just I don't enjoy the experience. It's only happening because this has been left at home for some reason. Having said that, who cares? If people enjoy if
That's
people
fair.
enjoy making photographs on their iPhone and they have no interest in getting a dedicated camera, my opinion kind of now is that as long as people are interested in the craft and people have a passion within them to document life, who cares? But if I would always try and get someone onto a dedicated camera because, there's no argument. They're still much better than what any smartphone can do. Regards smartphones have got some cool like software integrated into the devices that, can where you might in the first instance some kind of softer or more balanced dynamic range, but really if you know what you're doing with this and you're out shooting, you're always going to get better image quality, not necessarily better images because it depends on who's using it, but you'll get better image quality. But I think of photographers, Dimpy, I always forget how to say her surname, but there's Dimpy. I'm really sorry, Dimpy. I would say Bialota. She's from India.
Okay.
She shoots Leica, but she made kind of her name using an iPhone 7.
Mhm.
And her photographs have just always, I just look at them and I'm like, how did you, and in a very loving way, I'm like, I'm so annoyed by you because you make these images and they're just spectacular. And I want to do it. And I'm not saying I don't make good images. I love my photographs, but I just love her style. And,
Mhm.
and, and she does a lot of her work with an iPhone. And often, especially on the digital screen, I can't tell if she's using her Leica or her iPhone. And I'm not thinking that either. I'm just thinking, Dimpy strikes again. So she's an
Yep.
excellent, absolute excellent, superb photographer.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I came to the conclusion a while back, like teaching in university, I was at NYU and like U of M or whatever. But like, I come to the conclusion on the best camera you ever got is one you have with you. And
Mhm,
so when you have folks like that that are using an iPhone 7 with like old school technology, not even the latest iPhone, for example, or
mhm.
the latest Pixel or whatever's out there,
Yep.
like it's cool to see them shooting in their style and to actually do what they do because it's all about how you see and like putting in the hours to actually go ahead and develop that over the time, I think, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And it's great because now photography is accessible to pretty much everyone everywhere, really. I've been to some countries where you wouldn't consider them as developed, whatever you want that developed to mean. Everyone's still got a smartphone. Of course, there's more rural parts of the world where they don't have access to that. It's still very much a privilege to have access to cameras, relatively speaking, but more so than back in the day. You really had to have a bit of money in the bank if you were going to get a camera.
Yep.
Um, so the fact that now everyone can get into the practice of making images relatively easily, I think that's great. Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially to be able to do like you're saying something about storytelling when we filled out the questions together on there and stuff, and
Mhm,
you want to be able to storytell more in there.
mhm.
How do you think it is for people that are in these rural, remote areas versus like people that are in large cities and stuff like that, like the per storytelling aspect in there? How do you think people tell stories differently in the two different locations, for example?
I think when I think rural, I'm not talking like the outskirts of Yorkshire, it's which is a region where I'm from.
Hmm.
I'm talking like when I went to India. And it's I don't know, I think sometimes in rural areas or if we're being more blunt, poverty-stricken areas, it's easy to just tell a story of pain and suffering and things like that. One thing that always it changed my whole perspective on life. I had this moment when traveling through India. I know that sounds so cliche. Like I just heard myself say it and I was like, oh God, I'm disgusting. But it's true.
Nah, nah.
I was I was roaming around with my camera as I do, and I took a wrong turn and I ended up in one of the slums. And I didn't intentionally go there, but I ended up just after meandering, I just ended up in what they call the slums, which are the extreme poverty, like houses made out of very cheap tin houses, you would say. I don't
Yep.
know if that's the right way to say it, but that's what how I would describe it. And one thing that really struck me is these little children were running around and the parents were watching them and they were all giggling and laughing. And I was like, wait, shouldn't you just be crying all day, every day? And then it's like, it was kind of a real moment for me. It's like, if people in what we would deem who've been lucky enough to grow up in, relatively tough areas, but compared to rural parts of poverty-stricken India, it's much better. For us, if they can find a moment in their day to laugh and smile and enjoy life, then all of us should. And I would like to see more stories in these kind of areas where, and I understand why it's important to highlight the struggle and stuff like that, but there's room to explore kind of how humans, although they do deserve better conditions, how in those environments they can still find moments of joy,
Hmm.
moments of feeling good, moments of having a connection. You could be a multimillionaire alone in your mansion and no one comes to see you, or you could be someone living in a tin house in India who laughs and smiles because the child that they love is having a good moment running around and playing on the streets. And not everything in terms of material value is always the better thing, and not everything in lack of material value is always the worst case scenario. It's
Hmm.
far more complex than that. And yeah, I think there's room for storytelling to evolve into that. And I'm sure there are photographers that do it, but the norm tends to be, look at this part of the world and how bad it is.
I've seen it on both sides of the coin. 'Cause, like I've been on YouTube watching this series. There's a photographer by the name of Paulie B in New York
Yep.
City,
Yep.
and great work on there. I've never met him before, but I saw his series and I was like, okay, he's doing street photography. Let's see what this is.
Yep.
And I start learning about all these different photographers I never knew about, to be honest. And I know a lot of photographers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just like, okay. But this one struck me. I don't remember his name, but he's like, I'm in this remote part of the world. I don't remember if he was in, like, you're saying like India or a different area, Africa, something like that. And he said, a woman tapped me on the shoulder and said, just please don't show us in a bad light.
Mm,
And I'm like, that kind of struck a chord for me because, like, back in, I was in school, I went to University of Michigan for college.
mhm.
And I took the long way about because, like, when I was a kid, like 18, I was supposed to go to college. Never cared about it. I was the one that skipped school, forged the hall passes, got all my friends out of class, and went to party, to be honest with you. That kind of thing. I graduated several months after my class, technically, from high school, and I was lucky enough to have my grandmother, who was also a pro photographer, to kick my butt. And she's like, you need to get this done. You need to
Yeah.
have this happen. And my mom was on my side, my school counselor, whatever. And so I never went to back to college until my early 30s to finish my degree.
Mhm.
But when I got to U of M, like timing was everything, so to speak, because I was lucky enough to have David Turnley as one of my professors.
Nice.
Now, David's a really great guy. He's really down to earth. He'll tell you like it is, all that good stuff. Like, I remember a couple things. Like number one, he's showing like all of his Africa work because he went and photographed like apartheid stuff.
Mhm.
Or like Nelson Mandela as he's coming out of from Robben Island and stuff. Him and his brother Peter are both twins, and they were side by side for an award, for a photography award or something like that. One won, one didn't. They're a foot apart.
Wow.
How about that, you know? But then also, like, there's a big thing where everybody's run out of their cities and they run up a mountain, and there's like a big river that was like right there, and that's the only water source everybody had. It's like
Wow.
everybody got sick because that's what they were drinking from. Like there was this bad stuff in there because everybody had to use the bathroom, whatever, and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's got a picture of like a mother that's dead on the ground with a little boy holding her mother's hand, or holding his mother's hand on there, and just in tears. And so like
Wow.
that's what we commonly see in like the documentary photography is like he's like you got to pay homage to this stuff. But
Yeah.
then he's also got like a kid that's watching a dad play the guitar behind his neck in one of these African villages,
Mhm.
and the kid's just got joy on his face. And
Yeah.
he's like teaching us how you got to explore all sides of the coin, so to speak, and not just
Yeah.
like the struggles and stuff like that, like you're talking about. So,
Yeah. 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 100%. And I'm not saying that we like you say, I'm not saying we have to ignore the struggles. They people who are struggling tend not to have a voice, and photography can help give them that. But like you say, the woman who said, "Please don't show us in a bad light." That's not. She's basically said that's not all we are. You know. There's
right, right.
so yeah. I think there's. But that Paulie B guy, I think it's called Walkie Talkie. I
Walkie
think.
talkie. Yep, you got it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yep.
I don't know him, and we've not had a conversation or anything, but I do watch his show, and I find it really relaxing. There's something about watching just photographers just shoot the breeze and walk on the streets, and I know most of the walkie talkies they're done in New York, and
Yep.
it's not relaxing at all in terms of Manhattan and stuff like that, but just hearing photographers shoot the breeze and make photographs and share them within the video. um it's wonderful. There was a photographer that I discovered called Emily Howe. She's a
Mhm.
street photographer. Great character as well. Like, yeah, just that's why I love those kind of programs, because it's such a great source of discovering new talent. And he's also had some season names on there as well.
Yep.
So yeah, Paulie B, shout out if you ever see this. I think you're doing a wonderful thing with that show.
I think we got to get him on this show at some point too,
Yeah,
bro. Like,
yeah, yeah.
light him up
Seems
and
like a
stuff.
nice guy too. You know,
Yeah,
seems like a
seems like
nice
a
guy.
really down to earth guy and stuff like that. But yeah, you're talking about shooting the breeze and stuff like that. And like I saw like somebody was standing on the corner of 34th and 6th or something like that. I'm just like, yeah, I've been there. I've been through that struggle. There's nothing happening. Like you just ain't feeling it. You're just like, why the hell am I here?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
that whole thing on there as well. So
Yeah,
like
start
it's relatable.
contemplating your life. Yeah,
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 yeah, it's really down to earth and relatable. And that's like why I try to keep these conversations real as I'm doing them as I'm starting on here too, because like this is our first one. Thank you. Ah. But all these conversations are just gonna be candid, like real, authentic and stuff.
yeah,
And maybe somebody else will find it relatable too, hopefully, as
yeah, yeah, yeah.
something I'm thinking about. So um
Nice.
we always throw the sketch down and lead up to the masterpiece, as I say on there. And there's been many of us that have gone through like the trenches in New York, for example. And
Yeah,
you go out there and like if you get like, oh man, like 3 to 5 solid images in a year or something like that that can actually stand a portfolio on there,
yeah.
like I think you're doing something good. But everybody's like, I expect 100 for the day, and I'm like,
No,
it don't happen that way. Mm-mm.
no. I, I'm not gonna call anyone out here, but an editor recently who's got a very respectful publication, they felt that I wasn't right for the publication because I didn't have enough images. And I shared like 20 street images, and I
Mhm.
thought, I have thousands of images,
Yep.
and many hundreds that I love, but there's like an at stretch, if I want to keep a solid standard, 20 images that I want to share with the world, like that I want everyone to, because what's the point, clicking through someone's gallery? You always put your best images first. And if you put like 50 to 100 images in your gallery on the website, one, no one's going to look at all of them. Like
Right.
people. So anyone who thinks that people are going to take time out of their day to look at 100 of your images in one sitting. No. Like, maybe there's a few photographers that could suck that kind of attention out of people, but no. And two, the longer you go on, if you use the rule of showing your best work first, you're just showing you're showing if it was a graph, you'd be, this is how it would look in terms of, whereas if you put, like you say, you might get 3 to 5 solid images a year. And if you then look at them collectively over the span of 10 years, within them, you're going to have the strongest ones. So I would rather have a portfolio that went like this in terms of quality than just gradually just left people like, oh my God, this guy's terrible. But no, I just want to say no bitter feelings to that editor. It's his publication. We all have to have reasons not to put someone's work on. But I felt the reasoning. I thought, it's.
You bring up a good point, because have you ever done like a book or a zine or anything like that with your work, or is this something that you're interested in doing, or?
I want to do it eventually. A lot of people in my life want me to create, because I've done so much traveling,
Yeah.
to put a travel book or zine together. But I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of self-doubt, but when I look at photo books, like, I'm a big, I know everyone is, but I'm a big fan of Steve McCurry, to be honest with you. I always have been. And I look at his books and I'm like, well, unless I'm doing that, what's the point? Even though, it's taken him decades to get to there. So I'm maybe a little bit precious about doing it, but one day I would love. It'd be a dream come true to have, not only make a book, but have people say, yeah, we want that. That'd be wonderful. I'd be
Yeah.
lying if I said it wouldn't be.
Thing is, too, is I always think about, you got to show your voice instead of like Steve's voice on there.
Yeah.
Like, Steve is a guy, I ran into him by chance in Washington Square Park one day. I
Yeah.
was with a class and I had them out on the street shooting. I see him over there shooting. I'm like, hey, everybody, there's Steve McCurry over there. And everybody's like, who? And I had to explain who he was and show him
Oh,
some images on the phone, whatever and stuff. But like, he's a really good guy. He sat down, talked to us, all that good stuff. But he's been through some stuff. How'd he get
hmm
there? He went out there and he did what I call living.
hmm hmm
And that's the thing, is like, we don't come to all these portfolios just by chance. We
No.
don't go out there and say, hey, I want to create this today. We go out there and set the road for this, but then we see that, and all of a sudden that becomes more important than this, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like this path instead of the straight and narrow path, so to speak, on there.
Yeah.
And so like, I've always followed just like projects and stuff like that for as far as what I show. Like, sure, I've shot commercial work for, like I say, Condé Nast or Live Nation, whatever, and stuff like that. Do I show all that? Mm-mm. Do I care
hmm
about that? Mm-mm. That's for money.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I'd rather show what I'm passionate about and what I love than to show something that I just shot for money, so to speak. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I
Like
mean,
when you get into that book thing on there, like, man, that'd be really cool. Cause like I've seen a lot of your work on your Instagram and stuff like that.
yeah.
And like just how you shoot differently than everybody goes out on the street and stuff like that, man. You got a unique eye. And so
Thank you.
that's something with your voice on there I'd encourage you to do.
Yeah.
Like if you do it simple like a zine even on there, get a
Yeah.
zine out there, like, I don't know, run it for like 20 bucks, whatever, and stuff like that. Get it out in the
Yeah.
world on there, you know?
Yeah. I
It's like,
appreciate you saying that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't say stuff just for my health.
No.
I say stuff that I truly believe in. So
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
But as you get into stuff like that, like, man, I was just talking to one of my students the other day, and she's like, "Oh, how do I do this book?" Because she's doing a long-term book, old school, like rock and roll in New York City and stuff like that. She was a bartender back in the day, and she got access to all these people that you wouldn't dream of. It's just like the coolest project on there she's got going.
Nice.
And you're talking about music and stuff. I was like, what was it to be there with like Bowie back in the day and stuff like that? And she's just like, I was behind the bar and Bowie's just being Bowie. And I'm like, it's like, I can't even.
You can't. What does that mean? I
What
mean,
does that mean? Like, what was it like? Like, yeah. But anyways, when you think about putting a project together like that, it takes time. Like
yeah.
we're doing sessions. I'm doing like a mentorship with her where I'm putting her through the paces of like writing and doing images, and she's talking about the music and all that stuff too.
Mhm.
And she's got to get it out there. She's got to get the confidence, like you were saying on there, because like as you get the confidence and you say, "Hey, this is okay for me to be me and to put my work out in the world," versus like Steve McCurry and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
then all of a sudden you're just like, okay, got some momentum here, and the train starts rolling, as they call it, you know.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
I'm also trying to teach myself just in everything that just making a zine or a book, whichever, no matter regardless of any outcomes, just doing it is a great thing to do. Do you know that process of kind of I okay, so I have made one, as in I've sat down with my images and I've thought about where, where everything's going to be and how images are going to relate to one another and how the flow. So I have one that's digitally made, so to speak,
sure,
but it's very much it's private, and just that process of kind of reviewing my work. And dude, it was so hard because I think about this sometimes, right? Like I said, a few minutes ago, I've got thousands of images from the past, God knows, decade, shall we say.
hmm,
And obviously, I choose what the world sees, but the world doesn't necessarily. Whilst it's very kind when people say we like your work. I could have a gold mine of images on my folders that I just think, nah, they're not great, and they could one day somehow come out to the world, and everyone's like, oh my God, where's this? Where have you been hiding this work? And it's like, it's so hard kind of, and this is why you just have to try and not care really about the outcome, because it's so hard to match what people like and it be completely in line with what you like. And that's not to say there's certain elements of my work I don't like. I like every image I made because it's fun, it's
yep,
cool, it's a small little note of my whole life, and I love that. But
yep,
in terms of kind of public consumption, there's obviously more favorite, and I've what's on my website. Those are the image I believe to be my best work, but it might not be what everyone else in the world thinks my best work. They could be in a folder somewhere hidden away, and I'm sat on this kind of gold mine of finance and popularity, and I'll never know about it because not that
yep.
that should ever be, but lots of money, not lots of money would be good, but a decent amount would be nice. But
Yeah, I mean, at least a living, it's like, yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I hear
You
what
know,
you're saying. Yeah,
I was just gonna say I had to. I made a bit of money through making images, but most of my money came from writing about them.
right.
And I loved that. I loved being able to write about photography, but I would be lying if there isn't a part of my being where it'd be like, God, imagine if I just made a photo book and sold prints, and at the end of it all, I had $100,000. Wouldn't I'd be lying if I said that wouldn't be nice, but it can't be the motivation, because otherwise you'll just stop making photographs.
Right, like, actually finding what it means for you versus, like, the money portion or, like, what it
Yeah,
means to other people, like, socials, like, all these different components.
yeah,
Like, we were talking about a little bit earlier, like, just I go out there with the RX 100 in my pocket. If I see something cool, I pull it out, I take a shot how I feel it. I don't
yeah,
spend a lot of time with them these days. I sit there and shoot from the gut, shoot from the heart, shoot from the head.
yeah,
And if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. That's how a lot of us work, I think, you know?
yeah, yeah. Do you know? Well, there's theories that the head, heart, and gut all have their own brain, their own way of thinking and seeing. As I can't wrap my head around it, and I'm certainly not the right person to explain it. But I saw it, and I think the best art is when all those brains are aligned, and
Yep,
it's not just the mind brain, it's also the heart and the gut brain all saying, oh yeah, we should photograph, yeah, we should definitely get the camera, make the frame. But it's a very difficult thing to do, because and an example of what I mean, I think a lot of photographers, going back to the social media thing, they shoot with the mind brain, and that's why you see a lot of work very similar. There's
mhm,
it might be popular, but there's no identity to it. And that's not sour grapes on my part. Power to anyone who has whatever they deem to be success, and whether that's having hundreds and thousands of followers and likes and stuff like that. Power to you. I'm not going to say that that's wrong, but it I think there's often a consequence of that is you're losing kind of that aligned way of seeing the world through your head, your heart, and your gut, and making working that way. And that's kind of what I want to try and do now. I want to have, an imaginary line,
yep,
and what I do is going to be more thoughtful and more there's going to be more of a construct to it.
You bring up a good point. It reminds me a lot. You ever see the work of Ryan Muirhead before?
Hmm.
Yeah, Ryan's really wonderful. Like he just shoots like what he feels basically.
Yeah.
And he's really emotive in the work and like he's really raw and like intense and whatever and stuff. He's like, hey man, like back in the day I was a Mormon or whatever it was, like I think it was a Mormon or something like that.
Okay.
But he's like, I got him away from that because it was holding me down. And he's like, I wasn't feeling authentic. Like I think he was struggling with his parents, like he was struggling with some addictions and stuff like that he talked about.
Okay.
But then he come up with photography and he found his way basically through photography, like how to live, how to be authentic, like how to actually make a living, like all sorts of stuff became because he actually had a camera. And
Nice.
like I'd love to see more people do that kind of thing versus
Yeah.
just like chasing the algorithm thing like we were talking about. Cause like the algorithm, yeah, it's your 15 minutes of fame, go for it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Not wrong, but I mean, what does it get you long run on there? Like the this in Buddhism they call it the chakras and stuff like that. I think it is.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so aligning like that thing and finding your purpose in life is like the greater question, I think, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think, that's something I love street and travel. I love just, having no rhyme or reason, just going out there and letting the world just be itself because, you know, it, I don't think there's ever something not happening. I think it's more about where our minds are at. We're either in that zone to connect. There's always something happening out there. Always. It's so unpredictable, especially when you move around a lot.
Mhm.
And I love all that, but I feel like I want my work to have more of a of an impact. I'll share what I'm doing at the moment. I'm currently developing a project called How We Heal, and it's about how men, it's focused on men,
Mhm.
have different approaches to healing trauma, and also managing kind of daily mental well-being. And there's a lot of people out there. Talk therapy is has kind of always been the traditional one, and in some parts of the world, medication is kind of thrusted upon people very quickly. But there's a movement of men nowadays that they're doing everything from kind of cold water swimming to, I know someone who goes to the middle of nowhere with a group of guys, and they hug each other and they scream out loud. And there's different ways in which men are approaching managing their minds.
Mhm.
And I think I want to shed more light on that because I still think it is still a stigma that's not yet rubbed off in terms of kind of, especially with men, um, going within themselves and thinking about what they're feeling and how those feelings are impacting them, not only on a day-to-day level, but on a spiritual level as well. We're getting there. And I know men from different backgrounds that are curious. I know a guy who's a construction worker, and
Mhm.
we all know what construction workers, the stereotype of them are. They're manly men and they haven't got time for feelings. They've got houses to build. But
Yep.
I know this guy. God bless him. I love him to bits. He is going against what he is stereotypically meant to be, and he's doing a lot of inner child work and things you wouldn't expect a guy who's spending 10 hours a day on the construction site, to want to worry about. And I think we're really in a phase where men are elevating themselves spiritually and mentally. And yeah, so I want to do work like that kind of showcases good stuff, and good steps that parts of society are taking. And it won't always just be a focus on men, but being a man myself and kind of
Mhm.
growing up and understanding what it's struggle it is to kind of be expressive with how you're feeling. That's why that's the particular focus that I have now.
I've always seen it personally as like a outlet for me with the camera because like I started my grandmother gave me my first camera at age 10.
Mhm.
And long story short, I shot everything I loved, basically, like family, friends, like wherever we went and stuff like that. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was my outlet. Speaking to your point on there, because like on my family history on there, long story short, like I have a lot of family members, basically, we won't name names, but they're like into alcoholism and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
a lot of that kind of stuff, that mentality is basically toxic, you know?
Mhm.
And so I didn't learn this till years later, but I exited all the pain through
Mm.
what I saw in images. And like everybody go, why are you photographing in black and white? Well, a lot of us that like suffer depression and anxiety and things like that. Well, we find black and white comforting. Is what I learned through like studying psychology and stuff like that back in school and whatnot too. We
Mhm.
find that comforting because it just kind of calms and soothes the world. It takes away the connotation of the color, like takes away the normal, like all
Yeah.
that different kind of stuff on there, you know?
Yeah. No,
So
100%.
it's a really great project because like even like that, like I think about how like you're talking about like that, like you could just like help so many people to realize where they're at in life and
Yeah.
to understand, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm the same, photography, from a personal perspective is honestly, I won't go as far to say it's saved my life, but it's kept me going especially in the darkest times. It's always been the best form of therapy for me. Whether it's a breakup or whether it's, I've had some health issues this past year,
yeah,
which I haven't really spoken about publicly. So I'm going to continue with not doing that. But, let's just say I've had some health issues this past year, and there were times where it was very, very bleak and very lonely. And, if I just told myself, I created, um, just a little game of where I had to just go out and make a photograph in 1 minute.
yeah,
Just go out for 1 minute and I had to come back with a photograph. That was it. Yeah, most of them were rubbish, and that's fine. The whole point is that this has often given me a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Even in those times where you're like, I can't face the world right now, and we all have those times in one way or another. Some of us more than others, and just picking up the camera has just always been my reason, if that makes sense. So kind of sticking in kind of the unspoken theme of the conversation, whether anyone sees a project of mine, whether anyone likes a photo of mine, whether all that stopped today, there was no way for me to share any of my images ever again. It would not stop me from making photographs, because the process gives me so much more than any kind of credibility that comes from it. Even though that's lovely, don't get me wrong, it's really nice when someone goes, "Good job, buddy." That feels great. But yeah, it feels great.
yeah,
But it's the process has to give you so much more than what external kind of idealization or acceptance can give you. So
yeah.
yeah, if social media shut down and no one wanted to see another image of mine ever again, fine by me. I'd be a little bit sad for a bit, but then I'd still pick up my camera and keep going.
You got it, man. Like, you remind me, like, I was out in LA for a workshop one time, and like one by one, it was a rainy day, and like all the students that had booked with me called and they're like, I can't make it today. I'm like, I was like, here we go, whatever, refund, 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 whatever. I was like, get out of here,
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
but not really. But anyway, I was still in bed in my Airbnb, and I was just like, well, okay, I'm not doing that today. I was like, I could sit here and mope, but like, what are you gonna do aside from mope? Basically, like you're wasting your life. Basically, is what I told myself.
Yeah,
And so I booked Uber. I played Russian roulette Uber, as I call it. Just like you're saying about going out every day to make photographs, I was like, I'm
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
go out there and make some photographs.
yeah,
I load up, grab the headphones, all that good stuff. I go ahead and I tell the dude, I was like, take me to a spot that you think I should go, basically. I'll pay you whatever it is.
yeah.
And he's like, okay. And he takes me up North Hollywood. He drops me off next to a strip club of all points. I'm like, who the hell do you think I am?
But thank you. This is exactly no.
Any rate, I seen the Hollywood Walk of Fame right there, and I see a Jimi Hendrix star in particular. I start thinking about music like we're talking about.
Yeah,
That cues like Purple Haze, and I start thinking about, okay, I need to start walking to the groove or something like that. And I start making photographs of everything I see around me just to go ahead and start sketching.
yeah.
End up, what's that famous movie theater right there? It's like the Chinese, whatever it is. It's got like all the handprints and stuff like that. I forget what the name of it is at the moment.
Yeah.
But anyways, like I get in there, I start seeing tourists, and I start doing street photography. I'm like, okay, cool, here we go. We're warming up. and I go down the way and find some art shops. I'm like, cool, I need a new piece of work or whatever to take home to put in this blank spot I got on the wall. And this woman goes, if you love art, you should walk around the corner. There's another shop in a little alleyway right there and check it out. I'm like, cool. One thing led to the next. I start checking out that. I find my purchase. I'm like, I'm hungry. I start walking south. I walk past my friend's shop on High Voltage Tattoo. They're not there anymore because they shut down now. But I
Okay.
was like, I haven't been out here and seen these guys in a while, so I'm gonna walk in there. Boom, 30 years of photography. I don't know if you can see that right there. Light meter.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. It's coming through. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. And
Nice.
so one of my friends did that on that day to mark 30 years of photography for me. I was like, okay, I got up, dressed up, showed up, went on an adventure. This happened. What else?
Yeah, yeah.
Get me some In-N-Out burger. You got to have the In-N-Out burger when you're on the West Coast, all that good stuff. If you eat that sort
Okay.
of thing, cool. If not, cool.
Yeah.
I was like, In-N-Out burger. Start walking up towards Sunset Strip. Like I say, I know a lot of musicians. I used to hang out with Lemmy Kilmister up that way. He's like from the old band Motorhead and stuff like that. He's a good dude, like
Nice.
before he passed and whatnot. But Lemmy, like he always used to hang out at the Rainbow up there. And like if you know anything about the Rainbow, there's like these little gambling machines in there and stuff. He'd sit there with his Jack and Coke, basically like gambling away, whatever. He lived 2 blocks away. Well, around this time he had passed shortly before. And
Okay.
so I go up there to Whiskey. The Whiskey's like this club, if you don't know where that is out there and stuff like that, really famous rock club.
Okay.
And I see up on the apparatus on the marquee on there, red jumpsuit apparatus is playing. Now these guys had a one-hit wonder back in the day, and I had put on assignment with them to go ahead and make a bunch of shots for them. I hadn't seen them in like 16 years, man. I was just like, okay, the universe is telling me something that I'm
Yep.
supposed to be here at this moment.
Yep.
I walk in and I see Ronnie the singer and I tap him on the shoulder and he goes, "Oh shit, not you again." And so I hung out, shot the show.
Yeah.
All of us go over to the Rainbow. This is when I was still drinking, so I'm sober now.
Okay.
But we go over to the Rainbow and we're all just like gone, whatever. We go down to Lemmy's old place. We're singing Motorhead songs till like 3 in the morning.
Nice.
Just because I got out of bed, my students canceled. It was a
Yeah.
bad day. Flipped it, turned it into
Yeah.
a good day.
I mean, isn't that's what I love about, and it's not just unique to photography, but what I love about it, just how many doors and paths it can lead you down, and its unpredictability, it's just when it's at the center, whether photography, if photography is at the center of your day, regardless of what happens, it's going to be great. It's
Yep,
something's going to happen. It would have been easy for you to go, okay, students cancelled, back to bed, but you're like, no, let's keep photography at the center of the day, and
yep.
then you end up having a great day like that. It's
Just like you're saying, your 1 minute photo thing, like you go out the door, you don't know what's gonna happen. You might see I don't know, the ghost will let me out there in the street. Who knows?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like it's just because you get up, dress up, show up basically, and you make the day you want to see, basically, is what I think, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
And
100%,
yeah.
100%. That's a cool story, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, all this stuff on here, I was just watching, there's a YouTuber by the name of Peter McKinnon. You ever
yep,
see
yeah,
Peter
yeah,
before?
yeah. Yeah.
He's talking about the other day on one of his latest videos on there, like where photography can take you. And I was like, damn, if that ain't the truth. Cause like just because you got a camera, it opens so many doors to places you never dreamed of before.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
man, this crazy stuff happens on there just because you get up, dress up, show up kind of thing like that, you know?
I mean, honestly, photography and making photographs just completely changed my life. If I I remember I'd flirted with photography, like I said, I started kind of 2005, 2006,
Hmm.
but then the reality was, at that time, I couldn't afford a camera, and as much as they would have loved to have, my mum wasn't, it was too much of a luxury,
Yep.
it was, they were very expensive back then. Um, so then I started using a camera from someone else about 6, 7 years later, and then I got I purchased my first camera, one that was actually my own, back in 2013, and I was like, I wonder where this is going to take me. And then honestly, I thought maybe I'd get like a studio gig. I never would have imagined, although I would have loved, that I'd have literally gone all over the world to, I think, nearly every continent around the world, making photographs, writing about them. I mean, I can't put into words just how much of a dream it's been this past, especially this past 6 years or so.
I have two questions for you.
Yeah.
Number one, did photography lead you to writing? And number two, where's your favorite place you traveled to?
Okay. So did photography lead me to writing? Mm, no. I'd always flirted with blogging and stuff like that. And,
Mhm.
I remember when I was younger, I made a blog about soccer, as you guys would call it,
Okay,
football
cool.
for my
Going
people in
men's
England.
also.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But then in 2015, I set up a photography blog, and that's really where I started, because I used to go on these little trips and then I'd write about them. And I've still got some. They're not publicly online, but they're still on the back end. And I look at them and I'm like, these I love them, but they're terrible. It's just me waffling on with no kind of rhyme or reason. But then I started writing kind of about society, and then I got a big commission in 2017 by Big. We've got a publication in England called iNews,
Mhm.
which is kind of one of the top 5 over here, on the lower end. And I wrote about AI, actually, about Google Voice and stuff like that. And then I started getting, from my photo blogging, because I was saying kind of more controversial things, and stuff like that. Blogs started to take notice, and I'd get kind of ad hoc articles here and there for, I think I had one in Petapixel, Feature Shoe,
Mhm.
some other ones. And then eventually I started working with Chris at the Photographer, and I
Mhm.
spent, I think, about 4.5 years there, nearly 5 years. And then by the time I left, I started as a contributor and I
Mhm.
left as the arts and culture editor. Um, and yeah, and then my writing went into other areas from there. So photography has very much been the bedrock of my writing, but it hasn't been my only form. I've written about relationships, and love, breakups, everything. To answer your second question, it's weird because where's my favorite place? Two, and Mexico and Colombia. I
Yep.
had a great time in the States. In terms of just traveling, like going to New York. I went to DC, Philly, California, Oregon, and I had the 3 months I was there was just awesome, man. I mean, I fell in love with Americans. I had quite a British idea of Americans, which was, my apologies, but not the most positive. It's like they're so loud and
Ah,
and
sure.
then but it's weird because what's frustrating, or deemed to be frustrating, about was also very lovable about them, because they're some of the most welcoming people I've ever met, and I had such great nights out. And because we spoke the same language, it was easier to make connections. But then after the States, I went to Mexico, and I'd been to Mexico before, but only kind of briefly.
Mhm.
And, I was in Mexico City, and just Mexico City is one of the best places I've ever been in my life. The culture, the vibrancy, the food, the dress sense, the diversity. Um, I just loved it there. And then I ended up in Colombia.
Mhm.
And then Colombia became what will forever be my pandemic home. I arrived to Colombia. Um, I was more into partying back then, and I was partying. I was, meeting women and things like that. And everyone was so warm and so kind, and it was great. And then after 1 week of being there, quarantine came,
Oof.
and I was like, oh, okay, well, let's see what happens. And I don't know if I think you came to Colombia after the quarantines, probably, but
Yeah.
they went on for like 6 months. They were strict, man. Like, I remember opening my door and just the military were on the streets, very friendly, but
Yep.
they were like, as long as you're in your house, we're friendly. And I was like, what is going on here? And then it's, it will always be my home for a very memorable part of life for all of us. And just the people there are beautiful. They're beautiful people, I went there kind of with the party mindset, and that's cool and all, but when you go beyond that, the people there are just some of the most beautiful people that I've ever met. My best friend lives there. Granted, he's not Colombian, but he's very much into the Colombian culture. He's lived there for a decade. His wife, who is Colombian, she's a beautiful person, and I've just been met with so much what's the word? Hospitality? No, very people are
Hospitality.
very hospitality, very welcoming,
Yep.
very
Yep.
kind. And it's a beautiful country as well. I've explored the country, and from kind of the diversity of nature. I think it's the second most eco-diverse country in the world after Brazil. And then just like the small towns, and then just Latin America, man, I've got so much love for it, and I miss it a lot. I miss it a lot.
Cool. You ever see yourself going back?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
But I it's been great coming back to England and reconnecting with my family, with my mum, with friends from back in the day, and stuff like that. And I've kind of fallen in love with my city again. I'd fallen out of love with it, but I've fallen in love with it again. But just my lifestyle out in Latin America, it was perfect because I'm a sports fan, right? I love football / soccer, but football, the English football. I love UFC as well. And it was great because I'd wake up on a Saturday and the English games would just be, I'd have my cup of coffee in the morning, put the TV on and football's on. And then it'd be like, okay, then we're going to go out and have our day. What we're going to do in the night? Well, we're going to get the fights are on in the evening, and it was great. I loved it.
Nice.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I do want it back. So I don't know when, but
Nice.
eventually, yeah.
Goals, man, goals.
Mhm.
Yeah, cool. Well, hey, man, I got to go ahead and wrap us up for today, actually, because I got a class coming up, to be honest with you. But what I'd love to do is I'd love to show everybody where they can see your work. We're
Yeah,
also going to go ahead and talk offline a little bit about getting your work up on the coffee and cameras as well, because I'd love to write up a piece on it as well.
sure
And have
thing,
you
brother.
tell the stories and like what inspired you about the work and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, where can everybody find you? Where can they see you online?
Yep. So I'll direct everyone first and foremost to my website, which is dangincreates.com. That's where you're going to see most of me. My Instagram is danginmoves, and you'll see me in the stories waffling on about my ideas, but you'll also see a lot of my photography. So those are the best two places really to see my stuff. And if you don't mind, I'd like to plug my photography website,
Yeah, yeah.
where I interview photographers. That's themframes.com. And it's not as updated as much as I would like, but you'll see regular kind of thoughts and notes on all the photographers that are making our scene and community a wonderful place to be in.
That's very cool. I saw you're doing that, and I was like, "Oh man, he's just like writing hardcore." But then I was like, "Okay, I understand a time thing because like I don't know, last year I started doing all these different blogs too, and I was like, there's only so many hours in the day."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So finding that balance between, writing for my paid work where I've got deadlines, and kind of also having a balanced life and getting out there. You're right. We do
Yep,
what we can. So yeah.
yep, we do what we do.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate your time, brother. I really do.
No, I appreciate you coming on with me. Like I say, this is our first one and done, so I appreciate you coming on with me and stuff. It's really great to connect with you finally, like face to face in a way. We're in
Yeah.
different countries at the moment, but I was like, this technology thing
Yeah.
is cool. If
Yeah.
you roll back through Colombia, say what's up. We'll be here for a
Yeah.
while. So,
100%.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice one. Cheers,
Cool.
brother.